Stop crying. It won't do any good. And anyway, you have a lot of work to do, starting right now.
Hey guys, I'm back with the milk. What did I miss? Oh. I'd like to apologize for not uploading it so long, but I've been dedicating all of my time to 100% completing the Sonic the Hedgehog spin-off games. This video took a lot longer to make than the first one because of, issues. But in this video, I'll be covering the console spin-offs. And the next video I upload on this will cover the handheld games of the series. And I know what you're thinking.
But Luxe Crux, aren't handheld games considered spin-offs too?
And you'd be right, but I feel that Sonic's handheld library is so extensive, those games need their own video. And if I included them here, it probably would have taken another year to make this video. Also, shut up, it's more fun this way. And after the handheld games, I'll top it off with crossover games like Mario and Sonic, Sonic and Sega All-Stars, and Sega Superstars Tennis. General stuff like that. So be sure to leave a like and subscribe for the journey ahead. With all that out of the way, let's get 'em. Okay, so before I get into the real meat and potatoes of everything, I'm gonna cover 6 bite-sized spin-offs from the 90s in one segment, kind of like how I did with Sonic Origins. There really isn't too much to say in the case of Mean Bean Machine and Spinball. Those two games don't really have any sort of collectibles or side content tied to them. You just kind of play through them until you beat them. Now for Sonic 3D Blast and Knuckles Chaotix, they're more traditional Sonic games in the sense that there are MacGuffins to collect in them. For 3D Blast, all you have to do is collect the Chaos Emeralds and beat the secret boss. And that's done by searching for Tails and Knuckles in every stage and giving them 50 rings for their troubles. And these have to be some of the easiest special stages in Sonic history. It can be a little tricky at the 7th Emerald, but yeah, that is it for 3D Blast. Okay, so I wanted to preface for Knuckles Chaotix that the one thing I try to pride myself on is being as authentic as I can, which means on original hardware, or at the very least, a re-release. Heck, I even had a capture card installed into my 3DS for the upcoming handheld video. But for Knuckles Chaotix, it usually costs $40 to $60 for a Sega Genesis, $200 for a Sega 32X, and over $100 for the game itself, so that racks up to a whopping
hell no! I'm broke as fuck!
I was hoping at the very least they were going to re-release the game for Sonic Origins or Origins Plus, but no, that'd make too much sense. So this will be one of the very few times in this series I'm going to emulate. Knuckles Chaotix is a game that has its own spin on regular Sonic gameplay. There are 7 Chaos Rings that play as the Chaos Emeralds in this game, and you get them by keeping at least 50 rings and reaching the goal. You're then warped into these super trippy special stages that aren't really too difficult. It kinda reminds me of that one Flash game I used to play in my computer class instead of learning how to do my taxes. But after you collect all 7 Chaos Rings, you fight this sick looking Metal Sonic and unlock the good ending. It's a total pushover though, so yeah, Knuckles Chaotix doesn't really change up what's already been done. It's your standard Sonic game. Normally, I wouldn't thoroughly cover something like Sonic the Fighters on a video like this because there aren't really any collectibles or anything, you just go through the 10-minute story mode and you're kind of done. But the Xbox Live version has achievements, so I figured I should cover that. Sonic the Fighters is still a pretty straightforward game. There are 12 achievements in total, and you unlock 7 of them by just reaching the second to last stage in arcade mode. Then you get achievements for mundane things like perfecting an opponent, breaking all the barriers an opponent has, or getting squashed by Amy's hammer. Needless to say, you can get every achievement the day you boot up the game. You can also unlock Honey the Cat by pressing select on Amy in the character select screen. There's only one more thing that isn't listed in the achievements that I feel you should do in order to attain 100% completion. So Super Sonic's in this game, and he's kind of a pseudo-unlockable character in the sense that he's only playable once. What you have to do is play as Sonic and not drop a single round throughout the entire game and take a round off of Metal Sonic. This might take you a couple of tries, but if you mash hard enough, you'll eventually get it. Sonic R was one of the games that I was only able to experience after buying Sonic Gems Collection a few months ago because it's never been re-released. Sonic R is a very short game in the initial playthrough. There are only 5 tracks in the entire game, but there are multiple things to unlock within them. There are these Sonic coins on the first 4 tracks with 5 of them scattered in each stage, and if you collect them all and finish in at least 3rd place, you can race one of the 4 secret unlockable characters: Metal Sonic, Tails Doll, Mecha Knuckles, and Egg Robo. All you have to do is beat them in a race and they're total pushovers. Next, we have the Chaos Emeralds, and each track has 1 or 2, and you usually access them by unlocking a gate that requires 50 rings to open. In order to secure the emeralds, you need to collect it and get first place, which isn't too hard if you know what you're doing. But if you fail, you get one of the biggest middle fingers in gaming. Well, fuck you too! And by getting first place in every track, you unlock the final course of the game, Radiant Emerald. You also unlock Super Sonic after collecting all the Chaos Emeralds, and he's broken. And unless you're actively trying to lose, or if you're a game journalist, you'll win every single race. And if you get first place on Radiant Emerald, you'll unlock Dr. Eggman as the final playable character. Man, I sure hope every spin-off is this easy. These games have been cakewalks so far. With that, that's the bite-sized spin-offs completed. Well, so much for cake. This is when everything went completely down the drain and months worth of grinding, screaming, and pure anguish started. Sonic Shuffle is by itself a pretty okay game. I know a lot of people write it off and just say it's Mario Party but bad, but they obviously haven't played Mario Party 5. Getting through the initial campaign is a fine enough experience. Sometimes the AI can be a little bit of a pain, but most of the time, as long as you have more rings and have a couple of precious stones, this game's power stars, you should be able to win. You should be able to finish the campaign in less than 6 hours. After the initial playthrough, there's only one thing that matters for completion: the Sonic Room. Pretty much almost everything you do in this game is tracked when you're playing through story mode. There's a scrapbook, plushies, minigames, and mini-events. The Sonic Room is going to be the main bulk of your completion, and let me tell you, this became one of the most frustrating experiences of my entire career of being a Sonic the Hedgehog fan. But let's start off with the scrapbook. The scrapbook is, well, a scrapbook that you purchase pictures for by using the rings that you collected throughout your playtime in story mode. You have to grind out a whopping 6,000 rings to fully complete it. Once you get enough rings, you can purchase pictures of the game's story with some gameplay screenshots and in addition, purchasing things from the scrapbook can unlock various things. Like if you purchase the bottom right photos of each main character, you unlock the secret characters: Big, Gamma, Achow, and Super Sonic. They're only playable in versus mode though. Which leads me to the plushies. These are unlocked by winning a game against the AI in versus mode with one of the 8 characters. Which means you have to beat a game of versus mode with every character. This can be a little difficult if you don't know what you're doing, because versus mode adds a duel feature that you encounter if you land on the same space as someone else. Moving on, we have the minigames. There's a total of 49 minigames, and 32 of them are unlocked just by landing on an event space. Minigames were surprisingly the easiest part of Sonic Shuffle, just because, unlike Mario Party, you don't have to wait a whole turn to play a minigame, you just need to land on the space. Technically, the minigames are the last thing I completed for this game, mostly because I was dead set on getting one thing done first. So, this is where things get terrible. Mini-events, much like mini-games, are one of the main things that are tracked in the Sonic Room. Mini-events are scenarios that mimic stage plays where you can either gain rings or power-ups. I think these as a concept are pretty cool, and most of the time, Eggman is the antagonist in these, wearing various outfits. It's pretty entertaining stuff. There are even some mini-events that are exclusive to certain characters. Like I said, I enjoy these, and it gives Shuffle a pretty cool identity. I was able to grind for these mini-events by constantly soft resetting my Dreamcast by pressing all the face buttons and start at the same time. And this is where the main problem comes up. Nobody cares about Sonic Shuffle! I spent 3 months of my life trying to find these mini-events because none of them were actually listed online. It wasn't until I finally figured everything out about this game that there's actually a Sonic wiki about it, and I'm beyond angry. Like, I'm editing this right now, and apparently this is just a new thing. No, this wasn't here before. This wasn't here before. I checked, and I checked. And if you look up Sonic Shuffle mini-events, you can probably come across my Reddit posts asking about this one specific minigame where Big finds a bomb. And I think the biggest takeaway from this is that this game made me use Reddit.
Do you have any idea how disgusting that is?
One day, I just decided to stop with the mini-events for right now and try to complete other aspects of the game, and next thing I know, my Dreamcast starts making weird noises and shuts off by itself. I boot it back up, and I soft reset so many times, going through so many load screens. I killed my Dreamcast laser. Lucky for me, instead of having to buy a whole other Dreamcast, I was able to get a replacement disc drive for pretty cheap, and I was able to finally finish up Sonic Shuffle. I guess that's what I get for trying to complete a game using original hardware from 24 years ago. But with that, Sonic Shuffle has finally been completed. I know a lot of you guys were really looking forward to me covering this, and I don't think you'll be disappointed. Shadow the Hedgehog takes what the adventure games and Heroes did and adds its own spice to it. Let's start off with the initial game. So in order to reach the true ending of the game, you need to play through the 23 stages and get at least 10 endings in specific pathways. You can unlock 5 weapons if you play at least 5 different paths. The weapons consist of a katana, a gun that can heal enemies and stops them from attacking you, a gun that locks onto enemies and obliterates them via satellite laser, an Omochao gun that explodes, and a gun that sucks up enemies. After you replay the relatively same routes again, the weapons are upgraded to level 2. After getting all 10 endings the game initially wants you to get, you make it to the last story, and after beating that, you get the Shadow Rifle, that one-shots damn near everything in the game. And that's it for the really basic stuff in Shadow, but this is where the grind begins. Let's start off with the keys. In every stage, there are 5 keys that unlock a secret door in that stage. What's behind these doors ranges from extra weapons, vehicles that are kind of super impractical at times, and shortcuts that can straight up let you skip half of a stage, which is pretty neat. Most of these are legitimately well hidden to the point where you'll most likely need a guide. Some of these are actually terrible to get though. Like the stage on the Ark where you have to straight up do a leap of faith to get this key with no actual indication of where it is with all the stuff happening on screen. Even with a guide, this should take a few hours. Now let's move on to getting A ranks on every single stage. So as you know, Shadow the Hedgehog has multiple missions for each level: Hero, Dark, and Neutral. Some stages have all 3 alignments, but some only have 2. But this adds up to a whopping 71 missions within the 23 stages. In order to get A ranks, you have to clear your selected allegiances missions and do them as quickly as possible. Now for the neutral missions, all you gotta do is go for the goal. Pretty much your standard Sonic game, which also happens to be my favorite. Getting the A ranks for this game was pretty fun, but it gets a little repetitive after a while. Especially the missions where you have to either find a random object or kill a certain number of enemies. After going through and A ranking all 71 missions, you unlock Expert Mode. This is pretty much the same as Super Hard Mode in Sonic Heroes. You go through all 23 stages in the game with more tricky level design, and all you have to do for most of them is just get to the goal ring. Much like Super Hard Mode in Heroes, if you get a game over, you have to start all the way back at Westopolis. Expert Mode is where Shadow the Hedgehog truly reaches a high peak for me. It trims the fat that hinders the base game and makes it a really sick run and gun game that makes you feel like you're a force of nature ripping through enemies. Too bad they'll never revisit this concept. Even if you don't like Shadow the Hedgehog, I'd recommend at the very least getting all the A ranks to be able to play Expert Mode. If not for the run and gun gameplay, just do it for this interaction. Well, everybody, looks like it's time for me to pack it up and move on to Sonic Shit. Okay, so this is one of the many reasons why this video took over 10 months to be made. Shadow the Hedgehog has a lovely branching path system, as we all know. The catch is, though, there are 326 possible endings. And in order to consider this game 100% completed, you have to unlock every single one in the library. So this means that you have to play certain routes differently. I have no idea how Sonic Team expected players to figure out the routes to get all of these, but luckily Sonic Retro had my back and had all of these routes mapped out. So this is where the grind truly took its toll and where I spent the next month and a half grinding these endings out. You know that one dark mission in Mad Matrix where you had to blow up all of the bombs in cyberspace for Black Doom? Yeah, I had to complete that mission 30 times! I mean, yeah, eventually when you're on your 100th playthrough of everything, it starts to sick, but this was one of the most unnecessary additions I've ever seen in a video game. Not to mention the fact that I had to play through Westopolis well over 300 times. If I'm counting my playtime of getting all the A ranks, keys, and playing through the initial game, I most likely clocked in over 400 hours of this game. If I wasn't at work, eating, or sleeping? I was playing Shadow the Hedgehog. So, what do you get after sacrificing 400 hours of your time on this earth and giving it to Shadow the Hedgehog? Nothing. You get absolutely nothing. Just a giant list that you finally crossed off after hundreds of hours. It almost didn't feel worth it, but damn it, when I did this for the first time, I felt a weight get lifted off of my soul. And with that, Shadow the Hedgehog has once and for all been completed. Swear to God, if Sonic Shadow Generations has something like this, I'm gonna run my car through Sega headquarters. After what I went through with Sonic Shuffle and Shadow the Hedgehog, Sonic Riders was such a breath of fresh air. It's a fun game through and through, and the completion process is fairly straightforward, but a little grindy. Let's get started. It doesn't take too much to get through the 2 initial campaigns of the game. Each story should take around an hour or so to finish, and the only requirements usually is to get first place. After you complete the Babylon story, you unlock Dr. Eggman. Beat Team Sonic story, you unlock Cream the Rabbit, Shadow, and
Hear me out.
And just like that, we're at the post-game. First thing we should cover is the Grand Prix mode. It's exactly how it sounds. In order to unlock stuff, you need to get a gold medal for both the Hero and Babylon portions, meaning that you have to get first place overall. If you get the gold medal for both teams, you unlock the 2 Sega-themed stages. This is pretty cool, as it has remixes and stage gimmicks from various Sega properties. Now let's cover the mission mode. After beating the Hero story, you unlock Storm's missions, and after playing the first stage in Babylon's story, you unlock Wave's missions. Instead of playing as the birds, you play as the heroes. Both Storm and Wave have the same missions, adding up to a total of 80. Mission 1 has you racking up points by doing tricks. Mission 2 has you collecting pieces of junk, which also help you build better gears when you collect enough of them. Mission 3 is pretty much a time trial. And missions 4 and 5 are usually just knowledge checks of what you've learned throughout the game. Now, there are ranks for each of these depending on how fast or how well you complete these, and you get bronze, silver, or gold medals. After you complete Wave and Storm's missions, you unlock Jet's missions. Jet only has 20 missions, adding up to a grand total of 100 missions for Sonic Riders. After you, at the very least, complete every mission, you unlock Ai from Super Monkey Ball, Knights from Nights into Dreams, and Oolala from Space Channel 5, which is pretty neat. If you get a gold medal for all 100 missions, you get the Chaos Gear, which you may have guessed unlocks Super Sonic. Now it's time to grind for gears. Basically, there's a shop for gears that you can purchase with rings that you've collected throughout your races. And you need a lot! The method I used was buying the gambling gear first and foremost because it doubles any rings you have at the end of a race. Then I go to either Metal City or Splash Canyon because I know that there's an easy 100 ring capsule you can get in both courses. Since 100 rings is the max you can hold, this is ideal and maxes out your stats out for the race. Since, by the way, if you want to double your ring count, you still have to get first place. Kind of a pain to grind, but it's not Sonic Shuffle or Shadow the Hedgehog, so I'm not too bent about it. While you're doing everything else, you can unlock the 2 E-Series robots. You get the green one for playing the game for 15 hours, and you unlock the red one for playing 50 hours. Which sounds like a lot, but you're probably going to be doing missions and getting those extreme gears for a while. Which took me about a month of constant grinding to get done. But with that, Sonic Riders has been completed. After the breath of fresh air that was Sonic Riders, I immediately inhaled pollution playing Sonic and the Secret Rings. Let's start off with the initial game. You'll get through the initial story in about 6 hours, but after that, say it with me, this is where the grind starts. Quite literally this time. This game gives Sonic a level up system like an RPG. It goes all the way up to level 99, and the more you level up, the more upgrades you get for Sonic. To top it all off, they decided to make leveling up take a really long time in this game. Boss fights are generally the best for XP, and the quickest boss to defeat in the game is the Ifrit. So I kept replaying that boss over and over again until I discovered an infinite XP glitch. I'd like to give a huge shout out to DarkspinesSonic for discovering this so long ago. You saved days of my life. Link to his video will be in the description. To sum it up, if you die and pause the game at the same time, you could potentially get trapped in the pause screen and infinitely cancel your moves to get XP. After doing that for about an hour, I reached level 99 and was ready to tackle the rest of the game. So there's a book called The Special Book that records the things that you've done and collected in the game. These are kind of like makeshift achievements. There are damn near 100 entries to this, so I'll try to break it down best I can. A lot of things that you do in the stages help unlock various things in the book like concept art and badges of honor. Most of these are unlocked by getting medals at the end of a stage. These are pretty much your rank ranging from bronze to gold. Medals are purely based on the time that you get at the end of a stage. Time trials pretty much. I'm telling you now, you're going to be hearing this exclusively throughout your initial playthrough.
Just let it.
You're not meeting any time requirements until you're close to level 99. When you're leveled up all the way, the game does become pretty fun, in a Stockholm Syndrome sort of way. Just grind out those gold medals and you'll get a pretty good amount of entries in the book. Next up are the Fire Souls. These are pretty much prototype red rings and there are 3 scattered in select few stages. They're not a huge pain to collect, but you'll probably need a guide for most of them. Fire Souls unlock stuff in the book and the party mode? Oh my god. Okay, let's talk about the party mode right quick. Fire Souls unlock not only some mini games, but also some characters like Cream and Silver. The party mode isn't awful when you set the AI to easy, so getting wins isn't that hard. You just have to grind out this mode for a really long time and it can be super tedious. Like, you have to play party mode a total of 200 times, win 120 times, and play as Sonic 30 times for some reason. I'll admit, the title of that last one is pretty funny. Party mode didn't take me as long as Sonic Shuffle or anything, but god, I wish the party games themselves weren't tied to completion. There are also other things in the book like Big's picture book. Like in Sonic Adventure 2, Big is just chilling in certain areas, and you're definitely gonna need a guide for some of these. I think it's a pretty cool inclusion. I love Big. Then there are miscellaneous things like completing a stage with certain elemental abilities or getting to the final boss of the initial campaign before level 25. So after sinking around 70 hours into this game, what's your prize? A weird music video of sorts featuring the devs of the game, and I can't lie, I thought this was pretty charming. Mainly because it has an old YouTube home video style to it. It's literally just a 5-minute video of them messing around. I'm glad they had fun making this game. Too bad I didn't really have fun completing it. But with that, Sonic and the Secret Rings has been completed. Okay, so Sonic Riders Zero Gravity is gonna be a weird one. I'm recording this on a Wii instead of a Wii U like I usually do. This is because Sonic Riders Zero Gravity only has 2 controller options, either the single Wiimote or a GameCube controller. I went with option 2 because the Wii U has no way to use a GameCube controller unless you're playing Smash Brothers. And I really thought I was going to do a whole segment on this, but there really isn't much different from the first game. You beat the short stories, you have over 100 missions, and if you perfect them all, you unlock Super Sonic. Like, if you go back to the Sonic Riders section of this video, everything I say there is no different for Zero Gravity. Even the method for grinding out rings for all the gears. So, Sonic Riders Zero Gravity has been completed. Yeah. Okay, I can't lie. I had a lot of fun with this one. Let's get into it. Black Knight feels a lot more traditional with how it's structured, but with its own spin. Like, the ranking system is measured by stars instead of letters, with the max being 5. You do a lot of the things for a high rank that you would do for other games, but you have to take a lot more things into account. For example, there are things that can actively reduce the points you get no matter how well you do, like attacking a civilian or destroying property. Not to mention that there are certain morality badges that you can get that can actively multiply or hinder your rank. And I can't lie, these stages can reach Sonic Adventure 2 levels of tight when you're trying to go for the highest rank, even while having score multipliers equipped. Completing the main story should take less than 5 hours. After that, you make it to the post-game, and yet again you have a gallery like Secret Rings, but this time it isn't as tedious. Most of the unlockables are obtained by getting 5 stars in a stage, and page number 8 is where the actual achievements lie, like playing as the 3 other playable characters at least 10 times, or maxing out each of the night proficiencies. Most of these seem super easy, and, well, they are. They just take a lot of grinding. Let's talk about the item collection. There are 247 items to collect and craft throughout the game, most being at a specific location. This is fine at first because you're getting new items when you complete a stage throughout the playthrough. The problem is, though, there are super high value items and common items that can be extremely rare to spawn. So the whole finding items thing boils down to just doom scrolling through a game facts list and running through a stage hoping you get the items that you need. The weapons are pretty cool though. You can give them to any of the roundtable knights and it changes things up, but when you craft their ultimate weapons after getting the corresponding rare items, it feels like you're an absolute force to be reckoned with. Especially Lancelot, because he definitely has the most sauce in the game when he has his super weapon. The last things you can collect are what I like to call the chivalry tokens that I mentioned earlier. As I mentioned, they can help or hurt your score in a stage. You can get the good ones by doing stuff like getting a high combo chain in a stage or beating enemies quickly. Now, one last thing before we conclude Black Knight, I want to mention that while I had a great time completing it, there's something I found really unnecessary. So when it comes to completing stages, getting 5-star ranks aren't the only thing you have to worry about. You also have to max out your follower count, which is 25,000. Now, every milestone you get a new perk, like an increased soul gauge or being able to one-shot bigger enemies. The only way to get these milestones is to gain followers and max them out in every single stage, and you do that by replaying the stage over and over and over again. You also have to make sure you get the best rank possible because it affects how many followers you get at the end. Even if you get 5 stars each time, you're still going to have to play each of the 87 stages upwards of 10 times, and yeah, that's a lot. This should not have been a thing. But with that, Sonic and the Black Knight has been completed.
That was tight!
Bad news, everyone. Looks like we have to talk about this shitty game one last time.
Oh wow, these games existed. Anyway, both Sonic 4s are going to share a segment because they're just 2 bite-sized Xbox Live arcade games with not too many achievements tied to them. Episode 1 is your standard 2D Sonic game. You go through the stages, and if you have 50 rings at the end, you can play a special stage and get a Chaos Emerald. It's the Sonic 1 special stages, but you can guide Sonic by moving the entire stage itself instead of him. You also have to collect all of the rings in the first special stage for an achievement, and that took me a good few tries. After you get all of the emeralds, you of course unlock Super Sonic, and there's an achievement for beating every stage of Super Sonic, so you have to play some of the levels at least twice. Then you got miscellaneous stuff like collecting a certain amount of rings or destroying 10,000 enemies. And of course, just generally progressing through the game. The hard part though is one of the final achievements in the game. Make it through the Death Egg Zone without getting hit a single time. This was one of the hardest achievements I've ever gotten just because some of these boss fights straight up have RNG as a factor. So sometimes a fight can go one way multiple times, but others Eggman decides to change it up. And funny enough, that's not even the worst part. See, Sonic 4 is notorious for having one of the worst works of Jun Sonoe in the series. And here's the theme of the Death Egg. Yo, this song ass! Turn it off! That's it. That's the entire song, and as soon as it ends, it loops over and over and over again for the entire stage. After so many attempts, I couldn't take it anymore, and I played through on mute with nothing but sound effects enabled. Anyway, after that, you have one more unlockable, and that's collecting all the rings in the end screen. Sonic runs automatically, so you have to get all of the rings in one shot, and if you miss them, you have to play through the entire Death Egg Zone again. With that, you get an avatar reward, which is this, and the secret ending. 1 Sonic 4 down, 1 to go. Okay, so episode 2 is kind of the exact same as 1, but it's Sonic 2 coded. Go figure. Really, the only thing different is that the game has red star rings that don't do a damn thing, big surprise. Most of Episode 2's achievements are grind heavy if anything. Sure, you get achievements just for playing the game, but you have to do things like playing through the entire game without going to the world map. Playing as Tails 50 times in the special stages, meaning a second controller is required to get the achievement, and defeat every boss as Supersonic. I can't lie though, defeating the bosses as Supersonic was a pretty good challenge. And with that, that's the entirety of Sonic 4 completed. And they say Xbox doesn't have exclusives. Also, I know a patch for controller support in this game is a thing, but first of all, I don't have a modded Xbox 360. Second, I don't even think my PC can run Xenia effectively. Also, this segment is going to be limited to clips I found on YouTube that I have permission to use. This is because I had to move my Xbox 360 all the way down to my basement, and I can't exactly bring my equipment with me. Well, let's get started. Right off the bat, Sonic Freeriders makes a departure from previous games because instead of making missions their own separate thing, they're now tied to the whole story mode. It's your standard Sonic Rider stuff like doing a certain amount of high rank tricks, grinding on rails, or collecting rings. After perfecting every mission like previous games, you unlock Super Sonic, which is cool, but by the time I got finished with the missions, I didn't even want to touch anything in this game. Unfortunately though, that's just a quarter of Freeriders. Most of the bulk of your completion is going to be within regular races. Most of these require going through all 16 tracks. Then you got tag races, which you need to complete a race with 2 people, but luckily you just have to walk out of the Connect's line of sight, then walk back in to have it register 2 people. You don't even have to win, just play. Then you have to collect and buy all of the extreme gear and get first place with all of them. Same thing with all of the characters. Then you have to get hit with every item in the game at least 30 times, which you should hopefully get a majority of when you get through the initial game. A lot of these achievements are just busy work trying to reach the 50 achievement mark, and I don't get it. I really don't have much else to talk about. It's a whole nothing burger of achievements. I can at least rest easy knowing that as long as my Xbox account still stands, I won't have to play this again, until the inevitable review and Let's Play. You know what? This game sucks. It's not getting an outro. Bye! I'm not letting any of you forget that Skrillex is a part of Sonic's history. Sonic Boom isn't just a bad game. It's also boring. Right off the bat, you can get an upgrade if you beat Lyric on the 3DS version of the game that essentially doubles your health bar, making combat a bit more manageable. Sonic Boom is a fairly straightforward game when you're initially playing through it. You get through the story and fight hordes of enemies until the day is saved, but the real highlight of completion is through the collectibles. Sonic Boom has 3 types of collectibles. Chests that contain robot scraps, crowns, and trash. Literal trash. A lot of these are simple enough to get, all you have to do is look through every nook and cranny in a stage. The only one you'll probably have difficulty in finding is the trash because you can't dig it up until you meet Styx in the final hub world of the game when she gives you the side quest and scanner upgrade to collect them all. So even if you do a perfect run of each stage collecting everything you can, you're still going to have to backtrack through every stage in the game before that point. So the best way to get all these collectibles is with the video guide. Assuming that you're one of the 6 people with the Wii U and actually want to 100% this game. So I'd like to give a shout out to the Ownage Freqhog for the guide. A link to his guide will be in the description. Getting these collectibles help you unlock up to 4 upgrades for each character. Like spawning from death with full health and attracting robot scraps and rings that are further away from you. You can also unlock stuff in the archive section of the game by progressing through the story and collecting a certain amount of rings, and that'll take a pretty good while. Not much to talk about here other than the side quests and extreme mode, and trust me, we'll get to that. Let's talk about the town missions first. With the limited number of NPCs in this game, you're only going to have to do 9 town missions. Your reward for completing these are the power glyphs. There's not too much to say about these. You can only equip 1 to each character, and they give you very minimal power-ups. Now comes the extreme mode. It's exactly how it sounds. It's the regular stages, but harder. So basically, if you play through the game a second time to get all of the collectibles like I did, this is going to be your 3rd playthrough because I had no idea that this existed. So yeah, it's hard mode, but if you beat the stages, you get a star next to them on the map. Ooh. So I played through all the stages like regular, but there's one level that absolutely refuses to be completed. Crater Lake. No matter how many times I played through this level, the star icon for extreme mode never appeared. It didn't matter how many times I replayed it, which character I used, or whether or not I toggled extreme mode on and off. I tried everything I could think of. So I did the most logical thing and attempted to email Big Red Button. They actually have this game listed on their website. I just figured, hey, it's worth a shot. And as of this video, no response. Not too surprised, just a little hurt. Pretty disappointing, but my save file says 100%, and that's good enough for me. With that, Sonic Boom has been completed. Team Sonic Racing is a game that I completely disregarded when it came out, all the way until I decided to do this series in 2023. I'm happy to say that the game is pretty cool and the achievements are straightforward, if a little bare bones, but it has its flaws. When you play through the story mode, you need to get every star and every key for a respective stage. You get these by completing specific requirements in said track. Playing through the game's story and getting these stars will be the main bulk of your completion. Some of these vary in difficulty, but if you've played the Sonic and Sega All-Stars games, you should feel right at home here. The main thing that might give you trouble are the Grand Prix races. You have to get overall first place throughout every single race in a Grand Prix, and let me tell you, these bastards right here will make it so difficult for you. Every Grand Prix they're in, whether it's normal or expert, they're constantly on your ass. If you see another team in second place, wait about 10 seconds. Team Rose will be right back behind you almost instantly. You can always play with two buddies, but my friends have better things to do than to play Team Sonic Racing. I'd say that's the hardest part of the game next to getting the platinum medal on every challenge track. The rest of the achievements are pretty simple though. Most of them just ask you to do pretty much every mechanic in the game, and some stuff you can do with co-op, like finishing a race with 3 players. Next you have the pachinko machine that has a random chance of giving you parts for your vehicles. The last achievement were the online ones where I had to get first place in a race and beat a friend's high score. Since this game's online is pretty much dead on the Xbox, I had to get one of my pals to help me get these achievements. The second one is really weird though. Instead of there being a filter to find your friends on the leaderboards, this game requires you to find out what place they're in and to manually scroll all the way there. It's weird, but thankfully, you only have to do it once. And with that, Team Sonic Racing has been completed. Yeah! Whew! Finally done with the spin-offs. There were some diamonds in the rough that I finally got to experience for the first time, and also first time experiences with some of the worst the franchise has to offer, but hey, I had fun. I'm glad I got to experience it overall. I want to thank you guys for sticking around to the end of the video, it means a lot. Next time I do this, I'll do the handheld games, and I've been making good progress on those so far, so it should be a snap.